Metal groaned in the tunnel, a tired animal under the weight of the city. Diesel breath and winter damp curled into Captain Elena Markova's lungs as she steadied the muzzle of her MP7 against a rib of concrete slick with condensation. In the black gloss of floodwater at her boots, red taillights bled into a trembling ribbon. A white delivery van idled 40 meters out, bumper kissing the striped barrier. Through the windshield, a figure in a hood gripped the wheel, too small for certainty. Her pulse threaded through her glove. The selector switch clicked to single like a metronome for dread. On her left, Sergeant Lucas Brenner crouched, eyes asking a question he didn't voice. Over comms, a hiss, and then Major Moreau's clipped French. ROE still in effect. Positive identification or you hold. Civilians above. Elena's finger pressed the trigger guard. Not the trigger, discipline made physical. If she fired and the driver was a terrified kid, she would be the steel that cracked a life. If she hesitated and the van was a bomb, she would be the silence before 100 names were carved into stone. The hooded head lifted. The van inched forward. "Vixen, call it," Brenner whispered. Her breath fogged, a pale apparition in the beam of her weapon light. Elena counted 1, 2, 3, and the world narrowed to a gloved hand on a wheel, a fragile shape inside a machine, and the weight of 2 impossible futures. She exhaled and 48 hours earlier. The mountains rose like folded paper around the airfield, white edges lit by a thin January sun. Captain Elena Markova kept her hands in her pockets as the cold bit through the seams of her jacket and walked toward the low concrete of the detachment's main building. Frost sang under her boots. A forklift's beep-beep moved crates somewhere behind the hangar. The smell of coffee and solvent drifted along the corridor when she pushed through the door. Her name sat on a locker already scuffed. Someone had drawn a matchstick figure beside it, a little person kneeling. Under it, in neat block letters, Weakling. She breathed out through her nose, a slow valve, and opened the locker. Everything was in the right place. PT kit, wetsuit rolled tight, notebook, the blue-taped M4 Sim upper she'd requested for teaching CQB basics later in the week. She checked the charging handle anyway. Habit, trust, then verify. The training barrel was installed, the chamber flag showed, the serial matched her sign-out. She ran her thumb along the tape edge and felt it. New, not peeled and reset. Someone had tried to make her look twice. She had. It didn't cost her anything, to be sure. "New girl," a voice said behind her, amused and close. "We kept your corner warm." Elena turned. Lieutenant Sofia Rinaldi leaned in the doorway, arms folded, her dark hair scraped into a perfect bun that dared a hair to stray. 2 men bracketed her, Corporal Dobrev, a Bulgarian who'd repeated year 3, and Private Karl Novak with the gym shoulders. Old classmates, new uniforms. "Elena," Rinaldi said, tasting the name like acid. "Or do we call you by your call sign? Do you still have one?" Her smile was elegant, empty. "There's a familiarization in the gear bay. We'd hate for you to get lost." They didn't wait for consent. They peeled away from the doorway as a single organism, and Elena followed, not because they compelled her, but because the corridor narrowed, and she disliked blocking traffic. In the gear bay, rubber mats ran a green lane between racked shields and stacked breaching tools. A training sign hung above them. "No contact outside mats." Dobrev knocked a shoulder into her as she stepped onto the mat, playful enough to narrate as accident. Novak drifted to her flank. Rinaldi stood back, hands behind her hips like a range officer. "Orientation," Rinaldi said cheerfully. Show us you remember stance. Elena planted her feet at a 45, knees soft, shoulders over hips, the stance that lets recoil go through bone to floor and not into muscle. She kept her hands open, palms forward, non-threatening. We're inside ROE, she said. No contact. If you want a demo, we schedule one. Dobrev reached for her wrist. She didn't move at first. Let his fingers close. When he pulled, she stepped with it, turned her palm over his thumb, rotated her forearm, and walked him into his own shoulder with a gentle lever that put him on a knee without twisting. She set her other hand on his triceps, light as a shelf. Novak blinked, then lunged. She pivoted, used Dobrev's bent height as a barrier, and guided Novak's momentum past her. His boot skidded. She stopped him with an open hand at his chest. No strike, just a hard wall. He coughed. Enough, she said. Rinaldi's smile didn't reach her eyes. Still allergic to pressure, I see. Elena released Dobrev and stepped back off the mat. Her heart tapped once against her ribs, a measured knock. She could have dropped them both. The map unfolded in her mind out of habit. Entries, exits, improvised weapons. But she folded it back. The sign says report unsafe conduct, she said. I'm reporting the sign. It's peeling. Someone will trip. It landed between them with the softness of a joke that wasn't one. Rinaldi's cheeks colored. The two men squared their shoulders, then glanced at the CCTV bubble. Elena saw the calculation. Wrong venue, wrong witness set. Sergeant Lucas Brenner appeared at the bay's far end, with a clipboard tucked under his arm, his gait economical, almost invisible until he chose not to be. A thin scar curved near his jaw like a comma that promised a clause. Captain Markova, he said in German, crisp but not chilly. Med check at 0730. Major Moreau wants you for the training schedule afterward. Elena nodded. Copy. Rinaldi shifted. We were giving her a head start. She'll need it if she's to teach anything here. Brenner's gaze flicked to the mat sign, then to Dobrev rubbing his shoulder. He didn't smile. De-escalation is also instruction, he said, and if there was approval in his tone, it was folded inside neutral paper. In Moreau's office, morning light sliced the desk. Major Annius Moreau held Elena's file like a verdict. You'll serve as acting CQB lead this week, she said. You have exchange program certification. Use it. And Captain... Her eyes were courtroom steady. This detachment is not a courtroom. It's a match head near tinder. Keep it from sparking. Outside, the Alps were very clear. Elena stood a moment in the cold and let the air scrape her lungs clean. Someone had texted her a photo, an unlisted number, a picture of the locker scrawl. A caption sat under it like a finger pressed into a bruise. Stay weak. She deleted it, then logged the unsafe conduct. Not names, only violations and time. It was a small line on a long page, but it was a line. She would hold to it until it held back, or broke. Somewhere in the city, a van engine turned over and idled. She didn't know that yet. She only knew the day was moving, and she would not let anyone else choose how she entered it. The armory smelled of oil and old rubber, a clean, metallic quiet that always steadied Elena. Fluorescents hummed overhead. The bench tops held blue-marked uppers, magazine blocks, and a neat row of Glock 17 training frames. She pulled on nitrile gloves, placed her notebook at a right angle to the mat, and began, serial by serial. She lifted the first Glock, checked the slide for the simunitions barrel, pressed the trigger with a dead man's discipline, and watched the reset. The safety seal, a tangerine strip, lay flat and unbroken along the backplate. She recorded the number, the condition, the date. The ritual wasn't for show. It was how you caught the hairline crack before it became shrapnel. The second pistol's seal looked right until she tipped it to the light. The adhesive had been lifted and smoothed again. She rolled the edge with a fingernail, microscopic bubbles in the glue. Someone had opened it and closed it, hoping the next handler would trust the color and not the texture. She put it aside without comment, wrote the serial, circled it. Lieutenant Rinaldi leaned in the doorway, coffee cup held like a chalice. "Thorough," she said. "We only need to shoot paper, Captain, not marry it." Elena kept her eyes on the next frame. "We don't shoot paper," she said. "We shoot around people." Sergeant Brenner arrived with the med kit checklist and set it near her elbow. He didn't ask what she'd found. He only checked her tempo, matched it, and began auditing tourniquets and chest seals, the quiet sync of two metronomes. The room calmed around that rhythm. Beyond the threshold, boots scraped as Dobrev and Novak pretended to inventory slings, talking too loudly about weekend plans. The fourth Glock showed a hairline in the recoil spring assembly. Not critical, not today, but unacceptable for a week of runs. She marked it for replacement. The fifth pistol's magazine well was clean, but the next magazine she lifted felt wrong in her hand. Too heavy. She stripped it, found two live 9mm rounds nested among blue-capped sims like sharks among tuna. Her breath thinned, not an accident. She held up the magazine for Brenner to see. No speech, only the object and its betrayal. He folded the live rounds into a small evidence bag, sealed it, wrote the time and his initials. "I'll log the ammo vault," he said. Rinaldi sipped. "Clerical excellence," she said lightly. "Will you have time left to teach?" Elena wrote, not names, not guesses, only data. Magazine Cocker 27, mixed load discovered, weapon not attached, removed from circulation, chain of custody initiated. She pictured the afternoons force on force, a student diving behind a shield, trusting the world to be bounded by rubber and paint. A live round would make a liar of that trust and put her doctrine on trial. The pen moved. The facts stacked. Clean bricks. "You could just say who's doing it," Rinaldi added. "Save the paper cuts." Elena turned, finally. "If I accuse and I'm wrong, I break more than paper," she said. "If I'm right, the system will carry the weight. Either way, we will run safe. That starts here." Rinaldi's smile cooled. "As you wish, acting lead." Moreau appeared the way commanders do, present before you register their approach. She scanned the bench, the bags, the careful piles. "Report?" Elena slid the notebook forward. "Discrepancies are logged by serial. 1 mixed magazine, live rounds isolated, 2 compromised seals, 1 recoil spring flagged. I recommend we reset the entire SIM inventory and reissue under observation. Training pauses until the swap is complete." Silence breathed once in the room. It cost something to halt a schedule. It cost more to keep moving and pretend the ground wasn't shifting. "Approved," Moreau said. "Good catch. Brenner, assist. Rinaldi, you'll oversee the vault audit." The major's gaze settled on Elena. "You'll brief the why to the detachment, not the how. I want the lesson without the witch hunt." "Copy." They spent the next hour dismantling the day. Pistols went into bins. Magazines were weighed. Seals were peeled and replaced while 2 sets of eyes watched each step. The routine felt like cleaning a wound. Painful and necessary. The kind of pain that stopped worse pain later. Dobrev grumbled about bureaucracy. Novak made a show of lifting heavy things. Rinaldi's mouth was a straight line. The coffee abandoned and cold. When the last seal lay flat and unbroken, Elena gathered the defective parts for disposal. On top of the pile, she found a folded square of range, target paper. She almost tossed it without looking. Habit saved her again. Inside, in careful block letters, the message waited. Stay weak. She held it between glove and light. No anger rose, only a steadier resolve, as if the letters were ballast. She slid the note into the evidence envelope with the live rounds and passed it to Brenner. Logs updated, she said. Rinaldi watched, inscrutable now. Moreau nodded once, already turning to the next fire to douse. Elena peeled off the gloves and washed her hands until the water ran cold. Safety wasn't a sermon. It was 1,000 small choices made when no one clapped. She dried her fingers, checked her watch, and walked toward the briefing room where she would tell professionals that trust begins with proof, and that today, proof had spoken. The sim house held the cold like a kept secret. Plywood walls wore bullet scars in blue and purple puckers, a topography of past mistakes. Captain Elena Markova stood at the threshold with her M4 shouldered, the blue barrel a bright vein against matte black. The 2-point sling lay flat across her jacket, adjusted to a thumb's width of slack. She could hear the nervous breath of students behind their mesh masks and the soft creak of knee pads as they shifted. Baseline, she said. Her voice was low enough that they had to lean toward it. We're here to move, see, decide, shoot, exactly in that order. A hand rose. Novak, too casual, his mask tilted like a grin. Or we can just send it, Captain, he said. Speed is security, right? Rinaldi stood at the back with folded arms, a courtroom spectator. Brenner took the corner near the med kit, eyes on hands, not faces. Elena stepped into room 1 and let the cheap plywood smell fill her. Speed without information is a coin toss, she said, and coins have a habit of landing on their edges when civilians are in the room. She raised the M4, the muzzle married to her eyeline, and advanced 3 deliberate steps. Tango targets waited in the shadows, their painted eyes bored. She didn't shoot. She did something worse. She hesitated on purpose. She held the sight on a paper face and counted quietly to 3, letting everyone feel the pressure build inside the pause. Someone cleared a throat. A boot scuffed. Why? Novak began. Because your brain lags your barrel, she said. And then she sliced the room in a slow, exacting S, checking corners with the stock just brushing her plate carrier, muzzle never painting an unsafe arc. On the 3rd position, she tapped the trigger twice, blew spats on the paper's chest, and kept moving. The hecklers smelled the gap. Dobrev loped forward with his fire team, eager for spectacle. Let's see a blind corner, Captain, he called. Full send. Elena stopped at the blind. She rested the rifle's magazine against the door jamb, kept her body off the frame, and changed her footwork into a patient, piecemeal entry. We don't lean our faces into unknowns, she said. We build the picture. She eased the muzzle through a thumb's width, the tiniest reveal of angle, and let a cardboard hostage in a floral dress come into view, placed deliberately by the cadre to punish bravado. She didn't fire. The silence was an indictment that required no words. A snicker rose and died. Rinaldi's posture tightened, something like annoyance cutting through poise. They'll accuse you of moving slow, she said lightly. I'm moving exact, Elena answered, and then she demonstrated the trap. A second target hidden behind the hostage at a height meant to catch a sloppy chest shot. She raised her barrel a hair, sight just under the muzzle of the concealed figure, and took a single round into the paper shoulder where the hostage's silhouette ended. The pop echoed like a metronome tick. Brenner's head tilted. Approval didn't show on his face, but it hummed in the way he stopped shifting. "Pair up," Elena said. "We'll walk the route at a pace that lets your eyes decide first. Masks on, safety's confirmed. Call your hits loud. If any of you run, I will stop you mid-stride and make you start over." Novak tried to volunteer for a hot run. She looked at him long enough for the room to feel the look. "When you can move slow without wobble," she said, "you'll be dangerous fast." The first team flowed through like a river that had just learned it had banks. She corrected with 2 finger taps, shoulder back, muzzle down, breathe. When a student painted her with a careless turn, she froze the whole stack. "Reset," she said. "No anger, only gravity. Muzzles are language. What you say with them will be heard." Rinaldi drifted closer. "You think they'll buy patience when the world is loud?" She gestured to the plywood city. "When it's real, you won't have the luxury." Elena handed her the timer. "Start us," she said. They ran the route again, Elena anchoring point, each decision slower than ego wanted, faster than fear allowed. The beep at the end gave them a number that shouldn't have been true, faster than the rushed first try. Surprise flickered through the masks. Even Dobrev's shoulders eased. "Speed from certainty," Elena said. "We build certainty by refusing to skip the part where we think." Brenner called for water. Helmets came off. Steam rose from hair and necks. Rinaldi checked the timer again, like it might confess a trick. The briefing chime cut the air. Overhead speakers crackled with Moreau's voice. "All sections to the intel room. Transit net update." Elena cleared her chamber flag and slung the rifle. Students funneled out, loud and younger again. Brenner fell in beside her, voice low. "Exact beats fast?" he said. She nodded. The sim house exhaled behind them. In the briefing room, a map of the Alpine corridors glowed. A red line crept north like a vein filling. Moreau didn't smile. "Suspected VBIAD shifting along the transit arteries," she said. Windows tightening. Elena felt the ghost of the cardboard hostage at her shoulder and the way the muzzle had climbed a fraction to spare her. In the real world, the hostage might be that red line. The class, the pause, the patience. They were no longer abstractions. They were a cost she would have to pay in seconds and in doubt. She took a seat, pen steady, and listened for the places where certainty could be built before speed was demanded. Maps wallpapered the room like unfinished thoughts. Road spurs, tunnel mouths, a spaghetti of red arteries where winter traffic pulsed. The projector washed the table in pale light. Icons drifted as intel updates fed through. Captain Elena Markova folded her hands over her notebook to keep from tapping. Major Moreau stood with a pen like a conductor's baton. 3 likely corridors, she said. Signal hits are noisy. Window is hours, not days. Rinaldi perched against the wall, arms crossed, the picture of patience with a timer underneath. Brenner leaned near the medkit, reading the spaces between words. Elena scanned the overlays. The watchlist van could take the outer ring road, slip into the old rail tunnel for maintenance access, or simply ghost through commuter traffic to a river underpass. The only certainty was uncertainty. The air smelled of dust and coffee gone bitter on a hot plate. "ROE remains unchanged," Moreau said. "PID before lethal force, no collateral." A silence opened. Someone shifted a chair. Rinaldi let out a small, theatrical breath. "With respect, Major, PID at speed is a fantasy. We'll be counting eyelashes on a driver who might already be dead." Elena felt the prickle of agreement and fear in the room. She kept her tone even. We can build decision points that don't start with a trigger pull. Moreau's gaze clicked to her. Propose. Elena slid a printed page forward. Arrows traced a layered stop. First layer, X-net just past the choke. Portable two-person deploy. We pick a place with room to bleed off momentum and space for a shield line. Second layer, ballistic shields to control angles, loud hailer for commands, laser dazzler if needed to break fixation. Third layer, engine disable only if hostile intent or no compliance and no other option. We keep med assets 30 meters back with a clean lane forward. Time, Rinaldi said. You'll be threading needle eyes while pretending needles don't exist. Elena let the jab settle. If PID fails us, our layers shouldn't. A coercer can put a child in a driver's seat. A net and a shield give that child a chance to be a witness, not a casualty. We're not gentler. We're smarter. Brenner's pen made a small tick on his pad. The sound of agreement without speech. Oh, Captain from Logistics frowned at the map. We don't have enough bodies to cover 3 corridors with full layers. We don't, Elena said. So we don't try. We choose the choke with the best geometry and medical access. The rail tunnel has controlled entries and a maintenance turnout. If we're wrong, we're closer to the city's worst case, faster to pivot. If we're right, we own the funnel. Moreau moved to the edge of the table, shoulders narrowing as she weighed the edges of the choice. The projector's fan whirred like a small storm. What tells you rail over river? Roof load, Elena said. Less vertical unknown, fewer civilians directly above. Emergency water supply is closer for heat management if we need it. And the approach lanes give us room to set the X-net without blind corners. Rinaldi's mouth tightened. And when the driver floors it and drags the net into our shield line? We angle the net to bias left, pull into the dead space, and position the first shield behind a concrete rib. It buys seconds. She met Rinaldi's eyes. Seconds are decisions. The room's temperature shifted by a degree. Skepticism hadn't vanished, but it had somewhere to go. Moreau tapped the pen twice. We test the concept this afternoon. Simhouse won't tell us about vehicles. We'll use the service lane outside and a van. Non-lethal only, strict ROE. If the timing works, we pre-stage at the rail tunnel tonight. Elena wrote the words and felt their weight. Test meant witnesses. Witnesses could vindicate or fail her theory in public. The risk wasn't just professional, it was moral. If the layers collapsed in rehearsal, how could she claim they would hold when fear was louder? Moreau's voice softened, almost private. You're asking me to trust patience under pressure, Captain. I'm asking you to trust the work we've done at half speed, Elena said. Her hands stayed very still. The pause teaches your eye what to see when you can't afford to blink. Rinaldi stood straight. I'll run point for the rehearsal. Elena nodded. You'll anchor the shield line. I'll manage the net. Brenner, you place med. Copy, he said. The projector advanced another frame. Traffic thickened a pixel at a time, the world moving whether they argued or not. Elena closed the notebook. Clarity would have to be built from motion. Outside, the winter sun threw thin light across the service lane. The van waited, white and ordinary, engine ticking as it cooled. The plan lay between them like glass, transparent, fragile, reflecting each face that leaned over it. Field exercise in 30, Moreau said. Make certainty out of weather. Elena breathed in the taste of cold and oil, the familiar palette of work. She imagined the net unspooling clean, the shields nesting tight, the words on the loud hailer landing where fear couldn't drown them. Imagining wasn't faith. It was rehearsal. And the next hour would decide whether her kind of persuasion could live in a corridor where seconds were currency and doubt was expensive. Wind skated along the concrete, carrying the clean, high smell of snow. The white van idled at the far end of the service lane, exhaust drifting like silk. Captain Elena Markova knelt to inspect the X-net anchors, then stood and rolled her shoulders under the plate carrier. The shield team shook out their arms, nitrile tape bright on the handles, faces hid behind mesh and goggles, but tension needed no eyes. "Flow is simple," she said. "Net deploys on my mark. Shield line anchors behind the rib. Loudhailer commands. Engine disable only in the script, if compliance fails. This is not a race." "Copy," Brenner said from the medcart. He had already staged a litter, oxygen, and a calm that leaked into the air. Rinaldi hovered near the driver brief, hands loose, voice too friendly. "We'll give you a challenge, Captain," she said, like a toast. "Challenges are fine," Elena answered. "Surprises are not." Whistles piped. The van began its roll. Elena paced backward, eyes on the front tires, counting distance to the chalk line where the net would bite. "Stand by. Net, mark." The mesh unfurled and kissed the ground, a clean spread. The van's wheels ate it. The line cinched. The vehicle dragged 20 meters and settled, front left biased into the safe wedge she'd chosen. A glow of approval rose in her chest and vanished as a dull thud cracked the air. Off script, too close. A training flashbang rolled from behind a pallet stack, the white flare licking along the lane. The timing was dirty, close enough to rattle, not enough to violate the minimum. Students flinched. The shield line wavered. Dobrev's laugh carried even through ear-pro. Elena's brain tried to split. End it now to preserve safety, or prove the plan had spine. Her hand went to the radio. "Brake, maintain positions. Shields, anchor on rib 2. Do not chase sound." Another bang popped from the opposite side, calculated to draw the line out of cover. Rinaldi's silhouette moved like a conductor's shadow. Elena refused the bait. She lifted the loudhailer, voice steady. "Driver, engine off, hands visible." The van idled on. The designated driver, a student, kept still, exactly as briefed. The danger wasn't the driver. It was the shape of the crowd's fear. "Net team, hold," she said. "Brenner, confirm no injuries." "Green," he said, already scanning faces for the small signs, the hard swallow, the unfocused eyes. Another thud. Smoke curled. Someone on the line twitched a foot toward the noise. Elena stepped into the space their hesitation had opened and used her body like a brace. "Eyes front. Your muzzle is a sentence. Keep it grammatically correct." Psycho tone was quiet enough to make them lean in. The leaning replaced the flinch. The van rocked as if on a tide. She adjusted the angles by inches, pulled the first shield half a step right, nested the second behind it, built a pocket where angles couldn't intersect. Rinaldi's trick had produced chaos. Elena's answer was geometry. "Driver, show me your right hand," she called again. The gloved hand rose, tremulous by design. Left. It followed. Dobrev, somewhere unseen, lobbed another reduced charge bang. It popped behind the shields and rolled harmlessly into the dead space Elena had carved. The line didn't move this time. Discipline had a shape. They were learning it by feel. She switched to radio. "If we index now, we teach them that noise outranks plan. Not today." Then aloud, "Shield 1 on me. We advance 2 paces. Stop on my stop." They flowed forward. No hero lunges, only the slow inching of certainty. At the engine block, Elena tapped the hood with the baton, a ritualized knock. Engine off. The driver complied. She saw the student's eyes, wide but tracking. Good, no one was lost. Net team, slack to left, she ordered, creating the path she'd briefed, then opened the door with her body behind the shield's shoulder. The script called for a controlled extraction. She followed it like a metronome. Hands, seatbelt, step clear, kneel, cuffs. The cadence was the safety. Clear, Brenner called, already checking the driver's hearing and hands for burns that shouldn't exist. Elena lowered the loudhailer. The lane breathed out as if the concrete had lungs. Rinaldi walked up, mask pushed to her hairline, mouth curved in something that pretended to be praise. You took your time, she said. I took what the plan needed, Elena replied. Moreau arrived from the blind where she had been watching, eyes unreadable. She looked at the spent canisters, counted the shields, read the air. No injuries, she said. Not a question. None, Brenner confirmed. The major let the silence measure the moment. Captain Markova's concept holds under pressure, she said at last, voice carrying just enough. We'll pre-stage at the rail tunnel tonight. Effective immediately. She serves as Deputy Ground Force Commander. The words landed with a weight that clicked through rib cages. Dobrev's posture went stiff. Novak scowled behind his mask. A few students, younger and less invested in grudges, looked relieved. Elena didn't smile. Authority wasn't a ribbon. It was a debt. She glanced at the chalk line where the net had caught, at the scuffs where off-script noise had tried to pry open the plan, and felt the small, right exhaustion of a thing not broken by being used. Reset the lane, she said. Then we run it again. Quiet this time. The van ticked as it cooled, indifferent to the new gravity hanging over the platform. The winter light tilted toward evening. Somewhere in the city, traffic thickened. The red line on the map kept moving. The briefing theater smelled of carpet glue and tired coffee, a warm cave after the knife-edge cold outside. Projector light poured over the front wall in a pale rectangle. Captain Elena Markova took a seat 3 rows back, notebook on her knee, pen aligned with the spine as if straight lines could keep the night from fraying. The screen blinked to life. A helmet cam view, narrow, shaky, breath loud in the mic. A corridor, then a door half open on a dark room. The crosshair hovered. In the clipped audio, someone hissed, "Send it." The muzzle dipped. The video cut to black. Then a caption, white and glib, "Weakling." A few snorts in the dark. One low laugh. Rinaldi stood at the side with a remote, posture casual, like a hostess at a film club. Historical context, she said, sweetness varnished over steel. From Captain Markova's officer course, for training value. Elena felt the old heat crawl her neck, shame threaded with anger, indistinguishable if you didn't label it early. She kept her hands open on the notebook. Speak now and look thin-skinned. Stay silent and let the room inhale the lie until it tasted like truth. Major Moreau's head turned slightly, the kind of angle that asked a question without exposing an opinion. Brenner, 2 seats over, didn't look at Elena. He looked at the screen again, as if the pixels might volunteer honesty. Elena stood. The movement surprised even her. Run the full file, she said, with metadata. Rinaldi's smile cooled. That's what we had. Then you have the wrong file. Elena's voice stayed level, low enough to require attention. Archivist? A corporal at the console, young, cheeks freckled, swallowed. Ma'am, I can pull the original from the archive. There's a Blue Force tracker overlay. Moreau's pen clicked once. Do it. The room breathed a collective, reluctant patience as the progress bar crawled. Elena walked to the front and stopped short of the screen's glow, not eclipsing it, only sharing its oxygen. The real file bloomed. Same corridor, same door. But now the time code ran along the bottom, numbers steady as a pulse. A GPS breadcrumb dotted a floor plan in the corner. Friendlies bloomed blue. The crosshair hovered, then panned to a reflection in a glass frame. Tiny, domestic, a child's shoe. The audio was clean this time. "Negative PID," Elena's recorded voice said, flat as a ruler. "Hold. Possible non-combatant behind couch left." A second angle spliced in from a teammate's cam, the angle the edit had removed. A girl's hand twitched into view, small and open, not a weapon. A man's voice off-screen. "I've got movement." "Break," Elena's past self said. Strobe, left side, then verbal. The beam swung, washing the room. A woman rose, hands high, sobbing. Someone else, nervous, too loud, muttered, "Why didn't you just shoot?" Because the doctrine saved them, because the pause had meaning. The clip kept running, figures secured, weapons never fired. The Blue Force breadcrumb annotated the time it took. 19 seconds between first sight and hands high. Long if you were scared, short if you weren't guessing. Elena let the silence hold, then she faced the rows. The edited version took out the metadata, the second angle, and the ROE that applied. PID mandatory, no fire without hostile intent. We don't perform restraint to look noble. We enforce it so that our rounds say only what we mean. 19 seconds bought a living witness and a clean report. A chair creaked. Someone in back said, "Copy." Not to her, but to the idea. Rinaldi toyed with the remote. And if you had been wrong, then the woman would be dead, and the room would be quiet for a different reason. Elena didn't soften the line. Restraint isn't certainty. It's the discipline to admit when you don't have it yet. Moreau stepped into the aisle. "The lesson is process, not personality," she said. "We will not circulate cut material again. If you have footage, you bring it complete or you don't bring it." Eyes shifted away from Rinaldi without moving their heads. It was a small wind, but Elena felt it. Brenner finally looked over, not with sympathy. She didn't need it, but with the compact acknowledgement of someone whose work had just been defended by facts. His scar made the beginning of a smile and stopped, appropriate to the room. Elena capped her pen. The old heat had cooled into a steadier burn. Purpose, not anger. She thought of the training lane, of the net-kissing asphalt, of noise trying to outrank plan. She had chosen to speak, and the choice had not been about pride. It had been about what the team believed when the tunnel air smelled of diesel and time ran like a thin wire. The projector chimed softly as the system dropped out of playback. A new window bloomed, SIGINT overlay, numbers in red. The archivist blinked. Major? Live feed from transit control. A white van just matched the partial plate on the watch list. South approach to the rail tunnel. Chairs scraped. Coffee sat like a forgotten thought on the carpeted step. Moreau's voice came clipped, precise. "Alert all elements. Pre-stage as briefed. Deputy?" "I'm on the net," Elena said. She didn't have to raise her voice. The room leaned toward it. The past shrank to a manageable size, a scar under a sleeve. Outside, the night had a wet shine. The plan they had argued over was no longer a theory. It was a thing with weight that would either carry or crack. Snow powdered the tunnel mouth like ash, the air damp with stone breath and diesel residue. Headlights smeared light across wet tarmac, then vanished into the black throat of the rail underpass. "Captain," Elena Markova stood beneath a sodium lamp and let the cold anchor her thoughts while the map on her tablet pulsed with blue icons, their people, stepping into their marks. "Copy, say again last," she said into the mic. "Transit control confirms partial plate hit on the south approach. Uncertain speed," the watch officer replied. "SIGINT is noisy." Noisy meant human. People moved, and fear moved them. Elena slid her glove along the tablet, splitting the screen. On one side, the SIGINT bleed. On the other, Blue Force tracker breadcrumbs advancing like disciplined fireflies. Too many corridors. Not enough hands. She stepped to the chalked line where they had measured earlier. The X-net lay coiled in a hard case, its webbing folded like an origami trap. "Alpha, you own the net," she said. "Bravo, shields on rib 3. Charlie, roadblock contingency at the maintenance turnout. Brenner, med 30 meters back with a clean lane." "Copy," Brenner said, already shifting the litter to create a straight path that avoided the low concrete lip. He didn't ask why she'd picked this exact rib in the tunnel. He saw the geometry, angles that favored them, an overhead void with fewer civilians, the fast exit for casualties. Seeing it without being told was its own trust. Rinaldi's voice cut in from the outer ring. "Outer road and river underpass are unmanned if we pull any more bodies here." "We're not pulling more," Elena said. "We're setting eyes only. 2-person overwatch at each alternate corridor with instructions to track, not tackle. If the van chooses river, they shadow and feed us. We commit here." Silence, then a cool "copy." The word held judgment like a coin on a tongue. Elena rolled her shoulders, keeping the breath low, the fine tremor out of her hands. Spreading thin would make everyone feel busy. Feeling busy wasn't the same as being ready. Concentration was risk. So was dilution. She looked at the dark arch and picked her risk. "ROE update," she said. "Confirm. No lethal fire inside this tube without GFC authorization. Engine disable outside the mouth preferred. If we're forced inside, we work the angles, shields up, commands clear." "Roger," came the layered replies. Wind shoved a paper bag along the curb. Far above, a commuter train wailed somewhere like a ghost. Elena pictured the van as a number moving across a board, not a monster. And then, because she was who she was, she pictured the driver as a person moving inside that number. The old tape had taught her to hold both images without letting either paralyze her. Brenner appeared at her elbow with a spare radio battery, wordless, the offer and economy of care. She swapped it in. "You placed med near the standpipe," she said. "You're planning for heat or water." "Planning for whatever you call," he answered. His scar made that almost smile and left it unfinished, which felt right for the moment. Overwatch on the outer road chimed in. "Vixen, brake. White van eastbound, low speed, minor lane drift. No driver description." Her heart ticked once. "Say again, low speed." "Affirm. Could be heavy load, could be nerves." She turned to the net team. "Alpha, on my mark, you'll throw wide and bias left. Bravo, shields stack shallow, don't chase noise. We let the van choose us." Rinaldi came up from the shadows, goggles pushed to her helmet rim, breath fogging. "If you're wrong, we lose the hour and the thing walks through the city." "If I'm wrong, our eyes at river and outer road keep it visible," Elena said. "If I dilute here and I'm right, we lose more than an hour." The radio cracked again. "Transit control. Partial plate matches 2 of 4 characters. Confidence climbing." The tunnel felt closer. The sodium light hummed. Elena checked her watch, then the emptiness beyond the barrier, the long exhale of stone. "Positions," she said. We're done thinking out loud. Blue dots firmed on her tablet, each person a promise. She took her place near the net case and felt the world narrow to the necessary. A final call came over the net. Rinaldi's tone controlled, almost formal. Request to run point on the shield line, Captain. Elena looked at her, at the precision of the bun, the knuckles whitening and then relaxing around the handle. Beneath rivalry, there was a soldier who wanted to stand first in front of whatever came. It would either heal something or break it. Approved, Elena said. On my command. Headlights winked at the far curve, small and distant, like a match struck in a cave. The van was coming, and the plan would either carry or crack under its weight. Stone cold climbed off the tunnel walls and settled under armor like rain that wouldn't dry. The team's breaths made small clouds inside masks, each one a metronome marking nerves. Lieutenant Sofia Rinaldi stood forward of the first rib with the shield edge canted just a fraction too proud, the angle that invited a ricochet path if anything went wrong. Captain Elena Markova felt the impulse to step up and fix it with a fingertip, the way a pianist corrects a crooked metronome. She didn't move. Alpha, set, Bravo, anchor, Elena murmured into the mic. Say again for Charlie. Charlie set at turnout, came the reply. Rinaldi's reply rode over it, a shade too quick. Shield line advancing 1. Elena watched muscles ripple down the stack, obedience without thought. Momentum was a drug that felt like courage. She keyed her radio. Break. Hold 1. Confirm angle on rib 3. A beat. Rinaldi didn't look back. She nudged a boot forward, leading with edge rather than face. Aggressive posture reads well to fear. It reads badly to physics. Elena could feel the stakes swing like a pendulum. Call her off now and humiliate her in front of everyone. Or let the line drift and pay for it later. She stepped to the wall, letting the concrete take the weight of her shoulder so her voice could stay even. Sophia, she said on the command channel they shared, not the net. What do you see at 2 o'clock you want to own? Silence stretched. The question landed like a hand on a hot pan. Surprise first, then assessment. Rinaldi shifted the shield half a degree. Rib reflection, she said after a breath. False corner. Copy, Elena said, still private. Angle 2 degrees flatter buys you cover without giving you a gutter. Another beat. The shield settled. The stack eased as if a thread had been loosened somewhere under the skin. On the open net, Elena kept the tone impersonal. Bravo. Posture correct. Hold. She chose not to say good. Praise in the tunnel made people chase it. Brenner's voice came soft and close. Meant only for her. Med lane remains clear. Copy. She tasted iron in the air, the old scent of rails and wet dust. Above them lay a city with kitchens turning off lights, train schedules syncing lives to minutes. Inside the throat of the tunnel, minutes were a fortune they didn't have. Rinaldi edged again, this time with the shield face squared. She was learning, or choosing to pretend to learn. Elena could work with either. A harsh correction would split them now. A quiet question could bend the path by degrees until it led somewhere safe. Another comm ping. Outer ring overwatch. White van lost at roundabout. Possible reacquire on south feeder. Say again last, Elena said. South feeder likely. Speed inconsistent. Rinaldi exhaled, an audible thread of impatience. We should push to the barrier, she said on the general channel. Meet it early. Elena pictured the barrier. Good steel, bad sight lines. The echo would swallow commands. She could say no because I said so and carry authority. She could also poison the line. Instead, Sophia, what do you lose if your voice has to fight the tunnel at the barrier? Rinaldi didn't answer at once. Then, clarity. And what do you gain at rib 3? Clean angles, a pocket, room for med. Copy, hold at rib 3. The decision settled them all without announcing winners. Elena felt the choice in her ribs. Control by question, not by blade. It cost time she might need later. She put that cost on a mental ledger. Accounts would be settled soon enough. Transit control. The watch officer broke in, urgency tamped down but present. Partial plate now, 3 of 4, match confidence high? The tunnel's black mouth looked like a place between seconds. Elena flexed her fingers once on the radio grip. All elements, stand by. Commands first. No lethal inside without GFC auth. Brenner's scar bent again into that. Almost smile, unseen, but sensed. Copy. Rinaldi rolled her shoulder as if shrugging off a weight that wasn't armor. In the dim spill from the sodium lamp, Elena caught her profile, jaw tight, a strand of hair that had escaped the perfect bun, a woman trying to outpace her own reflection. Elena knew that race. She had run it for years. Headlights flickered beyond the curve, a smear of white dragging a red echo along wet concrete. Radio hissed. Overwatch! Copy, break, van visual, south portal. The word visual lit every nerve as cleanly as a switch. The line inhaled together. Elena felt the world narrow to a set of syllables and the space between them where the hardest work lived. Steady, she said. We will be heard. Headlights smeared across wet concrete and fractured into the tunnel's ribbed shadows. The van nosed the curve. White paint turned gray in the sodium haze, engine laboring like a smoker's cough. Captain Elena Markova tasted diesel on the back of her tongue and stepped into the pocket she had drawn on the ground with geometry hours earlier. Alpha, net on my mark, she said, the mic cool against her cheek. Bravo, shields lock at rib 3. Brenner, green? Green, he answered from the medcart. Lane clear. The van drifted left, corrected clumsily. Hands on the wheel? She couldn't tell. She refused the itch to imagine a face until she had one. Driver, engine off, she called through the loudhailer, the words snapping back from stone. No brake lights, no voice. The front tires reached the chalk. Net, mark. Webbing bloomed low and fast, kissing asphalt. The axles swallowed it. The lines drew tight. Momentum dragged the van another 20 meters, then bled out into the safe wedge. Metal creaked. The engine idled on, stubborn. Bravo, angle shallow, Elena ordered. Do not chase. A training day ago, noise had tried to tear her plan apart. Tonight there was no theatrical bang, only the steady drum of time leaving. She lifted her MP7, the compact weight slotting against her shoulder like it belonged to her bones. Selector clicked to single, audible to her, not to the van. ROE reminder, she said into the net. It steadied her as much as them. Commands first. No lethal inside without GFC, engine disable authorized with frang only if non-compliant. Copy, Rinaldi said from point. Shield squared now, voice tight but clean. Elena brought the sight to the lower right quadrant of the engine block, where fluid and fire could be managed, then lowered it again. The sight picture was easy. Living with a dead driver was not. The tunnel amplified small sounds. A loose heat shield rattled. A drip ticked somewhere. She tried the loudhailer again, slower, a cadence meant for frightened people. Driver, show me your right hand. Now your left. The windshield held a flat reflection, Nothing moved. "Say again, outer ring," she asked the overwatch. "Any occupants seen on approach?" Negative. Windshield glare. She imagined fingers taped to a wheel and felt her stomach pull tight. A dead man's switch turned hesitation into a fuse. A frightened miner turned zeal into a crime. The choice was not between clean and dirty. It was between kinds of stain. Rinaldi twitched. "We can end this with 2 to the block," she said, barely on the net, wanting permission. Elena kept her eye behind the sight and her mind behind the rule. "Hold! Bravo! Posture up! Brenner, you're 30 back. Eyes on faces if we pull one out." "Copy." She shifted half a step to change the ricochet path, then articulated the contingency for her own spine. "If the van surges, I take engine shots. If the driver shows hands, we go verbal to shielded approach." The world pressed inward, a fist closing. Air vibrated with the idle. She listened for the thing plans never covered, the human tell that made a decision honest. Something moved inside, a wobble of shadow behind the glass, not big, not forceful. Her throat dried. She raised the loud hailer again. "Driver, hands where I can see them, just your hands." A hand rose, small in a dark glove, shaking. Relief did not arrive. The tremor could belong to a boy, or to a man mimicking a boy. "Left hand," she said, and waited through 2 heartbeats that felt like an argument. The left hand climbed, hesitant, until both hovered at 12 o'clock. No sudden reach, no flash of metal. Rinaldi murmured, "We're burning seconds." "We're buying the right ones," Elena said, soft enough that only the mic heard. She angled shield 1 a fraction and moved to the edge of the pocket she had built, letting the ballistic face eat the risk. "Driver freeze, keep hands high, we are approaching." To the team, 2-step advance on me, don't outrun your sight. They flowed forward, slow as a tide. The van's engine note wavered, either failing or afraid. Elena's MP7 tracked the block. If the vehicle lunged, the decision was already made. She would put frangible into metal, not meat, and accept what came after. They closed to the hinge of the door. "Knock," she told herself, and did, baton to panel, firm. "Engine off!" The hands stayed up. The smallness behind the glass resolved, not enough to name, enough to wound. "Brenner," she said without looking, "if we get a miner, your first voice they hear." "Copy." Elena breathed once, deep and measured, the kind of breath that gave her finger something to do other than hurry. "Stand by to open," she ordered. The figure turned slightly, catching a slice of light, a narrow cheek, a hood string, too small to answer every question, enough to ask harsher ones. "Hold movement," she said, feeling the hook set in the moment. "We have a small figure at the wheel." The van ticked in the cold like a cooling stove, breath pluming from the exhaust in uneven puffs. Captain Elena Markova kept the shield edge in her peripheral vision and the windshield square in her sightline. The hands still hovered at 12 o'clock, small, trembling, wrapped in black gloves that made the wrists look thinner. "Driver," she said on the loud hailer, pacing each word. "Hold hands high. Do not move your feet." Her voice came back from the tunnel ribs with a soft, delayed echo. A second Elena, 1 heartbeat behind. She lowered the hailer and switched to net. "Bravo, hold posture. Laser on my cue only. Brenner, you're my first contact if we get extraction." "Copy," Brenner said, calm as a pulse. Rinaldi's breath fogged the lower edge of her mask. "We're past our window," she murmured. "I can take the engine block." Elena felt the option like a weight in her hands. 2 shots, frangible into metal, the decisive sound that would stop the waiting and start the arguing later. Clean for the moment, dirty forever if the driver was a child. She let the thought sit and did not pick it up. Brake! Outer overwatch cut in. Traffic diverted. Surface clear above. Say again, surface clear. Copy, Elena said, the message dropping into her calculus like a small stone. Less risk overhead, not zero. Laser standby. She lifted the dazzler, its housing cold, through her glove, and angled it so the beam would wash, not spear. Driver, she called, we are going to shine a light. Do not drop your hands. The green wall of light blossomed across the glass, turning the cabin into a washed-out aquarium. The figure flinched. No lunge. No dive. Hands, she repeated, softer, the voice you use to keep a frightened animal from bolting. The right hand drifted an inch lower, then climbed, apology baked into the motion. Rinaldi shifted behind the shield. If there's a switch... I see it, Elena said. She didn't, not yet. She saw fear and the outlines it made of ordinary things. We're approaching on the panel, slow. Copy, Brenner said. The litter wheels settled into the groove he'd measured earlier. A quiet choreography Elena barely registered and entirely relied on. They moved in 2 paces, then 1. The shield's rectangular world cutting the van into manageable slices. The green shimmer of the dazzler washed the dash. The instrument cluster glowed a faint red. The figure's hood threw a narrow shadow. The profile was soft, wrong for a grown man. Driver, Elena said through the hailer, if you understand me, tap the wheel once. Silence. Engine. Drip. Say again, 1 tap. A small motion, not a tap, a quiver, then nothing. Rinaldi's voice thinned. We're bleeding time. Elena felt time as a physical thing, a vein under a thumb. She set the hailer on the hood, the plastic cold. Last chance, she said, more to herself than to the van. She brought the dazzler off axis, dimmed it to keep pupils from pinning, and let the cabin darken to a more honest gloom. She tried another path. Driver, she said, this time on the command channel that fed the vehicle mic they'd mounted to the hailer. If you cannot speak, tap 3. Nothing. Then the right hand dipped, the left trembled, and the knuckles rapped, soft, almost lost to the idle. 1. Pause. 1, 2. Elena's scalp prickled. Not random, a pattern born of someone trying to make order out of fear. She stepped closer, letting the shield lip kiss the door seam. Again. Knuckles. 1. Pause. 1, 2. H-E, Brenner murmured, so quiet it was more idea than sound. Say again, Rinaldi hissed, not tracking yet. Elena swallowed. Driver, continue. The hands wavered, then the taps came. Hesitant, wrong-spaced, but striving. 1, 2, pause, 1, pause, 1, 2, 3, pause, 1, LPH, no. The spacing was off. The panic was shifting the lengths. She heard what the driver meant, not what the driver managed. Help. The simplest human word turned into percussion because the mouth wasn't allowed to use it. It's a minor, Brenner said, with a medic's certainty born of thousands of small details no one else saw. The way the wrists sat against the wheel, the cartilage-soft jerks. Rinaldi's jaw tightened. Or someone trained a decoy to get under our skin. Both were true enough to ruin easy choices. Elena let the 2 truths sit side by side until one of them weighed more. The taps weren't triumph. They were permission to risk. Approach, she said, decision locking her tone. Shield deep. I'll open the door. Brenner, eyes on hands. Sophia, if the van surges, you pivot me out and I take engine shots. Copy? Copy, Rinaldi said, voice flat with focus. Elena's gloved fingers found the handle, cold bit through the leather. She counted in her head. 1, 2, 3, a habit older than most of her scars, and pulled. The door seal sighed. Air shifted, bringing the warm stink of fear and fabric softener. Inside, the face still wasn't a face. Only the suggestion of cheek and the wet shine of an eye that had learned not to cry loudly. "Hands stay high," she said gently. "You did well." To the net, firmer. "We have a probable coerced driver." The engine note stumbled, then steadied, like a heartbeat considering a sprint. Elena looked at the wrists, the wheel, the space between them where a small device might sit out of her line of sight, and felt the cliff edge under her boot. If there was a dead man, the next choice would be the one that defined the night. "Hold," she said, and in the hold was the shape of the next chapter. How to separate a child from a machine built to make him disappear. The van's interior smelled of hot plastic and laundry soap. Under the green wash of the Dazzler, Captainite Elena Markova finally saw it. Tape cinched across a small glove, a crude pressure pad under the palm, wires disappearing into the dash. The right hand trembled. The left clung to the wheel like a second prayer. "Copy, probable dead man," she said into the net, voice level. "No break in contact. Brenner, prep webbing tether. Sophia, shield deeper. Give me a clean pocket." "Copy," Brenner answered. The litter nudged closer. His hands produced a loop of 1-inch webbing and a small carabiner, movements precise as surgery. "Jammer." Elena looked past the child to the mess of aftermarket electronics bolted under the radio slot. Ugly work, dangerous in its simplicity. "Crew, to partial," she ordered. "Do not burn full band. We don't know the failsafe." The manpack's status lights winked to a higher cadence. Somewhere in the tunnel, the ether turned to static. It would clip some signals and miss others. It had to be enough without being too much. She switched to a softer register for the person in front of her. "Hey," she said in Italian, slow and clear. "I'm Elena. You're doing well. I'm going to help your hand rest without letting go. Okay?" A whisper, more breath than sound. "Okay." Rinaldi adjusted the shield angle, the rectangle of safety tightening. "If this surges, 2 to engine," she murmured, no argument in it now, just readiness. "Copy," Elena said. She slid the webbing loop over the wheel, fed it around until it sat snug where the child's palm pressed. "Brenner, on my touch, you'll cinch the loop to take pressure. I'll keep the palm steady." To the boy, "When I say now, don't move. I will move for you." He nodded, a bare tilt under the hood. Elena placed her gloved hand over his, felt the bird-fast flutter of his pulse against the gel of the pad. Her breath slowed until her chest barely moved. The world dwindled to leather, tape, and the thin whine of the idling alternator. 3, she said softly. 2, 1. Now. Brenner pulled the tail of webbing. The loop tightened, the carabiner clicked. Elena eased a hair of weight off the boy's palm. The engine note stayed the same. No tone, no spike. She held another heartbeat, then another, and let half the pressure migrate to the loop. "Good," she whispered. "You're good." She met Brenner's eyes. He read the millimeters with her. They were 2 hands playing 1 note. "Outer ring clear." The radio crackled. "No pedestrians above." "Hold partial jam," Elena said. "Do not change anything." Rinaldi hovered at her shoulder, the shield a wall that turned their small choreography into privacy. "Left hand?" she asked. Elena looked at the wheel. The left hand clamped white-knuckled at 12 o'clock. Nothing taped under it, just fear. "We leave it," she said. "One thing at a time." She slid the quick release tab into position on the webbing in case speed became the only god left to worship. "Okay," she told the boy. "I'm going to free your fingers. Your palm stays still. I have you." Tape lifted with a sticky sigh. She felt his skin through the glove, felt bones too light for this work, and eased each finger away from the glue. When the last one came free without a chirp from the device, she nearly believed in mercy. Nearly. "Palm off," she breathed and let the webbing take it all. The engine idled on, unchanged. Brenner's exhale was the smallest thing. Pressure held. "Copy," Elena said. "We're going to slide you out. Keep your left hand on the wheel until I say." She brought the shield closer, nested the door between hard cover and soft voice, and began the extraction. Seatbelt off with a snip, torso turned under her hand, left wrist guided to rest against the rim, a tiny shift that preserved the illusion of control long enough to earn the real thing. "One more breath," she said. The boy obeyed, his ribs fluttering under her glove. They moved him down onto the litter, blanket over his shoulders, Brenner already checking pupils and hands, voice a low river in a language made of reassurance. Elena straightened, feeling her knees protest at the release of tension, and looked at the webbing loop biting the wheel. It held. The device had not noticed its new keeper. 2 bombs, she thought, the one under the dash, and the fear inside her people that could go off if she chose wrong. She had defused one. The second demanded attention now. "Crew steady," she ordered. "No changes. Bravo, set containment. We plan for handover to EOD or flood." The standpipe valve waited like a decision with a wrench for a face. A crack tore the tunnel. Sharp, metallic, wrong for sim, wrong for training. The shield sparked, a bright kiss of impact at the edge. Rinaldi dove the plate toward Elena without thinking. Angles perfect, muscle memory learning at last. The boy flinched under the blanket. Brenner threw a shoulder over him, already moving. "Break! Break!" Elena snapped, the word hard enough to cut the air. "Incoming from our rear arc, inside the cordon." Her mouth tasted of metal, not a stray, not outside, a shooter from within the geometry she had drawn. "Eyes," she said, voice dropping into the cold place where decisions live. "Find me the betrayal." The ping of impact still rang in the concrete, bright and mean. Sparks had kissed the shield's edge and died. Captain Elena Markova felt the shot's path as a geometry problem. Low right to high left, shallow incidents. A bounce waiting to happen if someone got brave and dumb. "Break, hold posture," she said into the net, voice a cold blade. "All muzzles forward, shooter rear arc inside our cordon." Rinaldi had already driven the shield across Elena's profile, plate squared now, lessons metabolized. Brenner lay over the boy on the litter, his body a tent against fear, one hand still on the small shoulder as if continuity could be tactile. Another crack, this one chewing a chip out of a rib. The sound told her pistol, not rifle. The flash bloomed behind a maintenance pallet stack where no one should be. Her eyes tracked the ricochet risk like weather. Low angle, slick floor, bad lottery for ankles and arteries. ROE reminder, no lethal unless PID with clear backstop, Elena said, mostly for herself, because Fury was an engine that lied about speed. "Sophia, on me. We build a trap." "Copy." She moved the shield line like furniture in a small apartment, 2 degrees at a time. "Bravo, angle, left. Catch skip into rib 3. Do not chase the flash." The plates created a V that drank threat and spat it into stone. She lifted her offhand, a conductor's cue. "Stun in 3, she breathed. "Bang right side of the pallet, mark." The pin came free with a practiced flick. She bounced the can low so it would detonate around the rib, not in the open lane. White hammered the shadows. The tunnel swallowed the bang and gave it back angry. A figure flinched behind the stack. Mask up, jaw tight, pistol in a clenched fist, searching for a target it had just lost. "Go," Elena said. Rinaldi flowed on the Flash's heel, shield first, edge tight to the pallet to deny a muzzle gap. Elena slipped the other side, muzzle indexed high with a backstop of concrete. The figure swung blind toward her, arm chicken-winged. She recognized the posture before she recognized the man, firing hand too proud, stance built for gym mirrors, not rooms. Dobrev. Rage tried to pick the shot for her. Training picked something else. She slammed the pistol wrist with the rim of the shield, the strike short and mean, not theatrical. The weapon clattered. Rinaldi stepped through, pinning his shoulder to wood. Elena hooked his elbow, folded him to the floor, and cuffed him with the economy of a lesson she'd taught 100 times without wanting to teach it this way. "Gun secure," Rinaldi reported, breath rough. "Copy," Elena said. "Brenner? Green?" "Green," he answered. The boy's eyes had gone saucer-wide at the Flash and were returning, pupils tracking. "Minor stable." Dobrev thrashed once, then stilled under the weight of restraint and failure. Up close, the betrayal wasn't cinematic. It smelled like sour sweat and bad choices. Tape residue smudged his fingertips where a glove had been stripped in haste. In the folds of his collar, Elena saw the edge of an earpiece he shouldn't have had. Not SIGINT, a phone bud, a conduit. "You fired on your own line," she said. Not a question. His mouth worked. The words that came were half defiance, half invocation. "You'd have hesitated us into a grave." Elena felt the answer rise. "You almost did," and let it go. The moment didn't need her anger. It needed closure. She took the bud, handed it to Rinaldi, and nodded to the pallet shadow. "Check for drop phones." Rinaldi moved, efficient now, not gloating. She came back with a handset taped under the shelf, antenna stub hacked short. "Trigger capable," she said, voice flat. "Crew remains partial," Elena ordered. "Do not change the jam." Then, into Dobrev's face, level. "Who's your second set?" He laughed once, a dry cough of contempt or despair, and looked toward the van without turning his head. It told her nothing useful and too much. The bomb as God, worshipped by the weak. "Bravo, restrain and remove," she said. "Bag his hands." Rinaldi's jaw worked as she cinched a zip tie. She had hunted Elena all week. Now she pressed the traitor's wrists together with a care that didn't hurt more than required. A discipline that said she'd chosen a side when it counted. The tunnel adjusted in her hearing, background sounds returning after the tight focus of pursuit. Engine. Drip. The faint electric whine of something waking where it shouldn't. Elena's skin went cold. She turned back to the van, the webbing loop still bit into the wheel, clean and quiet. But from under the dash, a thin new tone had joined the idle. A rising insect note that didn't belong to air or stone. "Say again, Med," she asked, already knowing the answer. "Boy stable," Brenner said, voice a hair tighter. The tone climbed a half step, then another. Not a phone, not a fan. A timer taking the stage it had been promised. Elena's breath found its discipline. "All elements, hold change. We have audible arming." The word arming made the tunnel smaller. Dobrev twisted once in Bravo's grip, as if the tone vindicated him. Elena shut the door of that thought before it could enter. "Stand by," she said, eyes on the wheel where a loop of webbing pretended to be a human hand. We're not done persuading this thing to live. The arming tone climbed another half step, thin, insect-bright, impatient. Captain and Elena Markova felt it in her teeth. The webbing loop still bit the wheel like a patient hand. Beneath the dash, warmth breathed out of hidden seams. "Brake," she said, steady. "No one moves the vehicle. Say again, no movement." "RO, do not move the van. Containment by water only unless surge." "Copy," Rinaldi replied. Her shield squared to the rib, the angle perfect now. An answer not just to threat, but to the way they had been with each other before this night. Elena pointed with 2 fingers to the standpipe valve recessed in the tunnel wall. "Brenner, hydrant bag. We feed a shallow basin ahead of the block. I want the water to pool, not slap." "On it," he said, already jogging light to the valve. He snapped the hose on, metal ringing once, a quick Stort's bite, and cracked the gate a quarter turn, the flow a controlled sheet instead of a fist. "Why water?" someone on the net whispered, young, scared. "Heat is the friend of bad chemistry," Elena said, voice low enough to carry calm. "We slow the friend. We float the panic." The first inch of water crept along the asphalt and came to rest in the pocket she had measured hours earlier with chalk and instinct. It lapped at the tire, climbed, found its level. Steam whiffed under the bumper. The arming tone wobbled, then righted, like a drunk correcting course. "More," she said. "No surge." Brenner leaned into the valve just a hair. "Flow steady." Rinaldi shifted to cover the opening created by their makeshift basin. "If the charge is higher than the block, then we buy seconds, not safety," Elena said. "I will take seconds." The boy under the blanket made a small sound, the voiceless ache of someone who had done everything asked and wanted it to matter. Elena glanced down. "You did right," she said, Italian soft. "Keep breathing with Brenner." "Copy," the medic murmured, counting quietly, giving the child a rhythm that tacked him to the present. The water climbed to mid-hub, steam ghosted, the tone blurred thinly, a scribble on glass. Elena pictured the device in her mind with ruthless modesty. No hero guesses, only the layout she could infer. A crude brain, a crude hand, heat somewhere it wanted. Cool enough and pressure low, the hunger might pause. "Alpha, prep plastic sheeting," she ordered. "If we need to raft the flow around the firewall gap, we do it fast." The team moved with the solemn choreography of people who knew the dance mattered. On the periphery, Bravo muscled Dobrev to the ground near the turnout. He stared at the water with an expression that wanted to be contempt and settled for fear. Elena refused to spend even a glance on him. Her account with him would be paid later, in words and ink. "Timer sag," Brenner reported. "No drama, only the data. Tone down a fraction." "Hold this load," Elena said. A sibilant hiss feathered the air as the water found a hotter seam and argued with it. The smell of warm rubber joined diesel and stone. She rolled her shoulders once to shuck off a tremor that had no tactical value. "Sophia, here. If we get a surge, you pivot me out and I go to engine shots. Your plate holds the skip. Understood." "Understood," Rinaldi said, and there wasn't an ounce of theater in it. The tone blipped, stuttered, caught. The seconds she had begged for arrived like coins sliding across a table. Not many, not enough to be generous, just enough to be spent exactly once. "Crew remains partial," Elena reminded, unwilling to let anyone turn a dial from panic. "No changes. Breathe." On cue, as if the tunnel had been listening, a high crackle chased through the van's underdash. A protest, an electrical shiver. The tone dipped again, landed on a new note that was nearly silence and then wavered. "Stabilizing," Brenner said. The word landed in Elena's chest and sat there, too light to anchor anything, too heavy to ignore. Stabilizing was not safe. It was a hallway between bad rooms. "Hold water at current," she said. "No more." Rinaldi drew a measured breath. "We could end this clean with 2 to the block right now." "Clean isn't the word," Elena said. She kept her eyes on the accident of reflection in the glass, the place where her silhouette, the shield's face, and the child's hood made a temporary geometry. "But I hear you." Above, the city was going on. Televisions dimming, a kettle clicked off somewhere, a train sighing at a station. In the throat of the tunnel, a puddle pretended to be a lake, and the bomb pretended to be asleep. Elena felt at once absurd and exactly right. "Status," Moreau's voice cut in from command, calm laid over iron. "You have discretion, deputy." Discretion tasted like metal. Elena swallowed it. The seconds she had bought jingled in her hand, slick as coins in rain. "Stand by," she said, and lifted the MP7 just enough to bring the engine block into a clear sight picture. Her finger still straight. The frangible rounds like arguments waiting their turn. The tone wobbled once more, close to stopping, not quite trusting itself to die. Between trust and trigger, between arithmetic and faith, she had one breath to decide how this night would be written on the stone above their heads. The tone wobbled, steadied, then found a thinner, higher note, like a wire pulled too tight. Water lapped at the tire, steam feathering around the bumper. Captain Elena Markova kept the MP7 indexed low, the front sight living on the block. Her mouth tasted of copper and old fear. "Deputy," Major Moreau said over command, iron wrapped in linen. "You have discretion." Discretion was a door with 2 cliffs behind it. Elena looked at the boy under the blanket, at Brenner's hand steady on a narrow shoulder, at Rinaldi's shield set square to catch a ricochet that hadn't happened yet. Above them, a city made of kitchens and names. She drew a breath until the urge to rush had somewhere to go. "Net, listen," she said. "I am invoking ROE exception, engine disable only, risk acceptance by Deputy GFC Markova, time 1938. The words landed in the tunnel like bolts. "Copy," Rinaldi said, simple and clean. "Copy," Brenner echoed, the calm that kept people inside their bones. Elena shifted her stance a thumb's width, enough to alter the skip path. "Sophia, plate tight on my right. If I call surge, you pivot me out." The shield slid closer, a door she could trust. "Brenner, protect the miner. Everyone else, ears." She let the sight settle on the lower right quadrant, where metal would drink rather than spit. Her finger found the trigger the way a sentence finds its verb. "Engine disable. Firing." The MP7 coughed once, frangible like glass into meatless steel. A puff of black lifted. The note hitch screeched, dropped, scrambled back up. She rode the wobble, refused the second shot until the world told her it needed it. Second. The round punched, cleaner, lower. Steam surged. The arming tone staggered into a ragged hum that sounded like a decision reconsidered. The van shuddered as if exhaling. "Hold," she said into the mic, to herself, to the tunnel. Silence tried to arrive and didn't. From under the dash, electricity crackled like dry leaves. A backfire hiccuped in the exhaust and died in the shallow basin they had made. The smell turned sweet and chemical, coolant and hot paint dissolving into a new air. "Tone decreasing," Brenner reported, still crouched over the boy. "No surge." Rinaldi's shield never wavered. No movement inside, she added, voice taut but steady. Windows intact. Elena felt the recoil in her forearms after her mind had already filed it away. 2 shots, 2 signatures she would own in every room that asked for the story later. She eased her cheek weld, kept the muzzle near the block. Discipline did not end with sound. Crew unchanged, she ordered. No one touch a dial. Steam thickened, then thinned. The arming tone slurred down, a dying insect. It hesitated, clung to a frequency like a last argument, and fell through it. What remained was the tunnel's old breath. Drip, fan, the wet hush of winter air moving through a stone throat. Audio negative for tone, Brenner said. He didn't say we're safe. He wouldn't lie like that. Elena stood very still, listening for the extra sound that meant she had missed something, that the night had kept one barb for pride. Her hands were steady. Her stomach was not. Bravo. Posture hold. Alpha, maintain basin. We wait for the quiet to prove itself. Seconds stacked, awkward and earnest as volunteers. Water tapped the undercarriage and went still. Her radio clicked. Moreau. Status. Device tone ceased after engine disable, Elena said. Van contained in partial flood. Miner extracted stable, 1 insider in custody. She swallowed once, the only concession her body demanded. 2 frangible expended. Copy, Moreau said. She let a breath cross the net. Deputy, keep the perimeter. EOD inbound. Rinaldi tipped the shield, just enough to check the floor. No ricochet, she murmured. It was a report and a reconciliation. They would not hug about it. They would remember. Elena's shoulders registered weight they had been ignoring. She rolled them once, not enough to look like relief, just enough to stay inside her skin. Brenner? Miners shaking, responsive, pupils equal. His hand never left the boy's blanket. He asked if he did it right. He did, Elena said, and the words scraped something tender on their way out. The steam thinned further. The van's interior became a shape again instead of a threat. Somewhere behind them, a siren played at distance, a future arriving on tires. Elena glanced at her watch. 1940. She would write those digits a dozen times before her hands stopped shaking in secret. She looked at the holes she had made and imagined the questions walking toward them with pens. Hold positions, she said, softer now. We'll let the quiet finish talking. Smoke curled, pale and insistent, around the shield's edge and lifted toward the ceiling where trains passed on timetables that had no idea what had almost rewritten them. What had she saved? What had she spent? The tunnel did not answer. It only offered space for the inquiry to enter. The debrief room held the hush of thick doors and recycled air. A red light glowed at the recorder's corner, a single eye that never blinked. Captain? Elena Markova sat with her hands folded on the table, palms warm against the cool laminate, and stared at the stamped number on the wall until her pulse slowed to something like speech. Major Anais Moreau sat opposite, spine straight, pen parked on a legal pad. A colonel from the Joint Oversight Board leaned back, expression tailored to neutrality. Sergeant Lucas Brenner occupied the edge of her vision, sleeves rolled, knuckles pale from not fidgeting. Lieutenant Sophia Rinaldi stood at the wall like a statue that had learned patience overnight. Begin with your risk acceptance, the colonel said. Elena cleared her throat. At 1938 CET, inside the rail tunnel south portal, I invoked the ROE exception. Engine disable only. 2 frangible rounds were expended into the engine block. EOD inbound at my last report. She kept her voice flat and precise, each word a rung on a ladder she refused to miss. The screen came alive. Helmet cam footage rolled beside a transcript column, timestamps matched to the verbatim brevity radio log. Copy, brake, standby, engine disable, firing. The tunnel reappeared as light and sound instead of sensation, the steam like ghosts rising from asphalt. Her voice didn't sound brave or fearful. It sounded like a tool used correctly. Just prior to exception, the colonel asked. Elena described the water load, the standpipe's quarter turn, the tone's sag, the moment when seconds showed up like spare change, and she had to decide how to spend them. She told the committee that she had imagined the driver as a number and then as a person, and that both images were true, and neither sufficient. Insider fire, Moreau prompted. Elena kept her eyes on the corner of the table and said the name. Corporal Dobrev. She did not spit it. She laid facts down in order, the pallet, the flash, the shield strike, the pistol on the concrete, the taped handset. He stated I would hesitate us into a grave, she added, voice even. I decided the grave could also be dug by haste. And the miner, the colonel said. Stabilized, Brenner answered, saving her from the memory of the boy's ribs under her hand. Pupils equal, coherent. He tapped help on the wheel. Rinaldi's jaw moved as if releasing an invisible bit. The geometry held, she said, no flourish. Her questions kept us together when orders would have split us. Moreau let silence stretch until the room had to breathe. Captain, she said, did you consider third and fourth shots? Yes, I declined. The tone died after the second. More rounds would have been performance, not necessity. The colonel's pen, scratched, neutral, relentless. Would you make the same decision again? Elena tasted copper again and told the only truth she could live with. I would make the same decision with the same information. If I had better information, I would want to make a better one. She let the admission sit, small and exact. Doubt wasn't weakness, it was measurement. They walked the timeline twice more. Chain of custody seals, custodial notes for the weapon. The ROE exception stamped into the log like a bruise you own before anyone else points to it. When the red light finally winked off, her shoulders registered gravity. Outside the Scalipiva, the corridor felt too bright, the coffee too loud. Elena stepped into the motor pool where the air was honest with rubber and cold. The white van sat under a tarp beyond the cordon, an inert animal sleeping under a gray sheet. Snow began without ceremony, powder that barely chose to fall. Rinaldi found her by the tool lockers. 2 beats lapsed before either spoke. I envied you, Rinaldi said. The words landed like a weapon set carefully on a bench. I thought control meant superiority. You used it like a nurse uses pressure on a wound. Elena let the image settle. Control is only control if it holds when someone else pulls, she said. Yesterday you pulled. Today you held. Rinaldi met her eyes and didn't look away. I called you weak. I was wrong. You called me something I had been before, Elena answered. I just decided what weak would mean. Brenner approached, paperwork in a plastic sleeve, his steadiness carrying across the space like a rope. EOD will clear the block by noon. The boy asked if there's a window in the med tent. His scar almost smiled. He likes trains. Elena looked toward the rail line where steel cut the morning with a quiet line. We'll find him a window. She took the pen Brenner offered, signed where signatures turn memory into record, and felt the ink scratch like flint. Phones buzzed in distant offices with rumors she would never read. The official statement wouldn't say her name. The faces that mattered had been in that room with the red light and had heard the log that didn't embellish. Persuasion wasn't thunder, It was a ledger, the entries you made when no one cheered. Moreau appeared at the hangar door, coat collar high, breath pale. "Training at 1400, she said. "Your doctrine just became policy. Make it muscle." Elena nodded. She would teach the pause until it had a shape students could feel in their bones. She would count out loud if she had to. She would waste no one. Not the boy. Not Rinaldi. Not Dobrev, whose ruin would be ink and absence. Snow thickened. Somewhere a train sighed and continued, schedule intact. Elena stood a moment longer in the open air and let the cold hold her up. The night had not granted triumph. It had granted accuracy. She could live there. She pulled her gloves on and walked back toward the line she had chosen, ready to draw it again.